I hate to sound like a broken record, but once again, Vivek Ramaswamy put in a stellar performance in an interview on CNN. This was a town hall-style event, and the moderator was Abby Phillip. This particular highlight started with a question about Vivek's comments on January 6th, comments that he made during the last GOP debate. Roll the tape.
Vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job?
Welcome back to Shadow Records, independent media for the people. I'm Scott. Let's continue. Of course, Abby framed the question in a way that would make most interviewees shudder. You know, blah, 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 aren't you worried, blah, blah, blah. I'll let her do it.
Speaking of those debates, let me ask you about something that you said at the debate last week. You used the phrase inside job to describe what happened on January 6th. The next day, Capitol rioter Alan Hostetter highlighted your comments at his sentencing. He is going to prison for 11 years. Hostetter threatened members of Congress. He brought a hatchet, knives, pepper spray, stun batons, tactical gear to the U.S. Capitol. Are you concerned that a convicted felon like that is now promoting your comments in court?
Have they not learned? Vivek doesn't flinch. Watch him attempt to answer this question while Abby repeatedly interrupts him and makes every effort to not let her audience hear what he has to say.
So here's my concern, Abby, and I want to tell you guys where I'm at. If you had told me, it's close to 3 years ago that January 6, 2021 happened. If you had told me 3 years ago, back when I was a biotech CEO, not steeped in this world, I was just consuming passive media, but was focused on my world of developing medicines. If you had told me that January 6th was in any way an inside job, the subject of government entrapment, I would have told you that was crazy talk. Fringe conspiracy theory nonsense. I can tell you now, having gone somewhat deep in this, it's not. I mean, the reality is this. We do have a government, first of all, we have to acknowledge, that has lied to us systematically over the last several years about the origin of COVID-19, about the Hunter Biden laptop that we were told was false by 51 CIA experts and otherwise before we now know that it was true. You can go straight down the list, the Trump-Russia disinformation collusion hoax, all of it. Now we come to January 6th. The reality is we know that there were federal law enforcement agents in that field. We don't know how many. I think it's shameful. If I may finish just answering.
Well, let me
this is really important.
I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you here because you're
I know
saying that there
establishment doesn't approve of this message. I know
that there were federal agents.
We should be able to talk about this.
You're saying that there were federal agents.
This is important to talk about.
Now, I'm sure Abby does very well, but I would not want it to be my job to have to interrupt an invited guest who's doing his very best to remain respectful. No one is tuning in to hear the opinion of Abby Phillip. If that were the case, she wouldn't need guests. Now, there are hosts, both liberal and conservative, who could pull off a show with no guests. Abby is not one of them. They're there to hear what Vivek Ramaswamy has to say. So, Abby, please, stop interrupting. But she won't.
The evidence
so we've seen multiple informants suggesting that they were. We know people were FBI informants who were asked to
Is there any evidence?
May I just finish this and you can come back to the question?
Well, let me clarify.
I know this is very uncomfortable for you.
I'm going to clarify my question.
I know this is an uncomfortable issue for many people, but we have to do the truth here.
I'm going to clarify my question because I want to make sure that you understand what I'm asking.
I understand this deeply. And I told you, I was with you 3 years ago. I'm not there now.
Where is the evidence?
Yes.
Where is the evidence that the government had a plot?
Let's do this.
An inside job.
But no, I'm going to tell you what an inside job is because I'm not
violence on January 6th.
I'm not going to let you put words in my mouth. I'm going to put my words in my mouth. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that.
Where is the evidence that the government was involved in planning or executing January 6th?
So I'm going to give you hard facts. And if I may, Abby, I know this is going to be a little uncomfortable, but we're going to go through this and you can push back on it after that. And you can push back on that. And let's do this fairly. Why did they suppress footage of now what's been released, 200 hours of footage of shooting rubber bullets into that crowd, shooting tear gas into that crowd? You didn't see that before. You saw what the response was to that. Now you see footage coming out of actually rolling out the red carpet for Capitol Police allowing people in.
Now, this interruption seems like the perfect time to review Tucker Carlson's coverage of one of the so-called leaders of this riot, the QAnon shaman.
The single most famous person arrested that day was a Navy veteran from Arizona called Jacob Chansley, often referred to as the QAnon shaman.
The so-called QAnon shaman. QAnon shaman.
Someone named Q Shaman.
Jacob Chansley became the face of January 6th, a dangerous conspiracy theorist dressed in outlandish costume who led the violent insurrection to overthrow American democracy. To this day, there is dispute over how Chansley got into the Capitol building. But according to our review of the internal surveillance video, it is very clear what happened once he got inside. Virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape. The tapes show that Capitol Police never stopped Jacob Chansley. They helped him. They acted as his tour guides. Here's video of Chansley in the Senate chamber. Capitol Police officers take him to multiple entrances and even try to open locked doors for him. We counted at least 9 officers who were within touching distance of unarmed Jacob Chansley. Not one of them even tried to slow him down. Chansley understood that Capitol Police were his allies. Video shows him giving thanks for them in a prayer on the floor of the Senate. Watch.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving the inspiration needed to these police officers to allow us into the building.
You're telling me that didn't look like an inside job? Now, granted, the inside job appeared to be guiding tours and facilitating photo ops, but nonetheless.
Again,
right through the front
the vast majority of the footage
evidence should have been released before, Abby.
Mr. Ramaswamy, the vast majority of the footage shows
and my deeper
police
question
officers
is this.
being overrun
and I want to talk about one more
by
case.
violent
this is really important.
rioters. That's
I'm
what
going to
the
give you
vast
I'm going to give you some hard
majority
facts.
of it shows.
So here's what entrapment
you can't
is.
Cherry pick.
I'm not cherry picking.
You
If I may finish, Abby. If I may finish, Abby. I'm not cherry picking.
Examples.
To the contrary. To the contrary,
you know who cherry picked
examples? You know who cherry picked?
The government. That is what happened.
The government cherry picked 12 hours of footage when there was 200 hours of footage. So cherry picking was the government, not me. Release the whole thing. And let me just finish one thing too, because this is super important as a topic.
So I
think this is a civil libertarian issue of our time. Gretchen Whitmer's kidnapping. I want to be really clear on this, because it's the same issue in the same FBI, same even part of the FBI. 3 people who were in an alleged plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer were acquitted at the end of trial because it was entrapment. That is, government agents put them up to do something they otherwise wouldn't have done. They gave them credit cards with spending limits of up to $5,000, encouraged them to buy munitions, plan something they weren't otherwise willing to plan. So much so, and I want people at home to know this, especially CNN viewers to know this, is that one of the jurors went to those defendants and apologized afterwards, gave him a hug, apologized, seeing what the government had put a poor guy up to who had to go to some Mexican restaurant across the street to get hot water. These people were exploited with credit cards up to $5,000, FBI agents putting them up to a kidnapping plot that we were told was true but was entrapment. Same thing with the Capitol Police, people letting them in freely.
Abby continues to talk over her guest. Is this persuasive? I honestly can't imagine that this tactic works on anyone with an IQ over 70, but they keep employing it, so maybe I'm wrong.
Many of those people then being charged.
Ramaswamy, look,
the government cannot put you up to do something and then charge you for it.
Look,
that's wrong.
I don't want to have
to the left, to the right.
I don't want to have to interrupt you. I really don't. But I don't want you to mislead the audience here or at home.
I think they've been misled by the mainstream media.
14 people.
The mainstream media has misled them.
14 people were charged in that plot. Yeah. A majority of them were convicted.
I said 3 of them were acquitted on grounds of entrapment. That's a fact. Dispute me. Was I wrong about that?
What folks need to understand.
Was I wrong about what I said?
The one thing I want to point out is that she casually acknowledges that 3 cases were acquitted on the grounds of entrapment. She should be acknowledging to her audience that the government should never be entrapping people. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, and who knows about the other 9 convictions? Does that necessarily mean that they weren't entrapped as well? Of course not. Now, why they keep bringing him on, I have no idea. It's obvious they have no one on that network who can match him. But I'm certainly glad that they do.